Star Wars is one of the most elaborately created fictional universes. It is so detailed that characters who appeared for just a couple of seconds in the background of movies and TV series have long and interesting backstories, sometimes deserving their own film adaptations. And I will tell you about the most interesting ones, who they are, and what makes them intriguing. Here, we will feature heroes from both the old canon and the Disney canon. Let's start with the fourth episode. At the very beginning of the movie on the ship Tantive 4, behind C-3PO, you can spot another protocol droid, U-3PO, and it was he who gave away the ship's location to the Empire. The Empire reprogrammed him so that they could track his movements, and the droid himself did not know he was transmitting information to the enemy. Remember that droid that Luke's uncle initially wanted to buy? That's R5-D4. In one non-canonical comic, we are given the real reason for the droid's malfunction. It turns out he deliberately broke down so that Luke's uncle would have to take R2-D2. The fact is that according to this comic, inside the droid was a real Jedi. This droid, named Skippy, broke himself down, realizing that if Luke's uncle Owen did not buy R2-D2, the Death Star plans would fall back into the hands of the Empire, and then everything would go downhill. Although this story is considered non-canon, the legend of the Jedi droid Skippy does indeed exist in the canon of legends. This droid also appeared in the first episode of the second season of The Mandalorian. At the Imperial High Officials meeting, sitting at the table was Wolf Yularen. In the animated series The Clone Wars, he served the Republic in the fleet alongside Anakin and Obi-Wan. He also appeared in the animated series Rebels, and he died together with the destruction of the Death Star. At that meeting, one of the seats remained empty. There is a possibility that this seat was supposed to be occupied by Director Krennic from Rogue One. But due to his death, he did not attend the meeting. In the Mos Eisley Cantina, behind the bar stands the character Boshek, a Force-sensitive smuggler. By all indications, his Force abilities were fairly low. He often meditated in an attempt to develop his Force capabilities, but for a long time could achieve nothing more than an occasional fleeting sense of another's presence in the Force. So when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker entered Chalmun's spaceport cantina, Boshek felt Kenobi's strong presence in the Force, although in reality he could have felt Luke Skywalker, who was untrained and unable to hide himself in the Force, but possessed an extremely high level of the Force within him. Obi-Wan also sensed Boshek. He approached him and said that he was ready to teach the smuggler how to use the Force if he agreed to take him and Luke to Alderaan. But since Boshek did not have his own ship, he was forced to redirect him to Chewbacca. Before parting, Kenobi advised Boshek to beware of the dark side and to deal with his illegal activities. He never became a Jedi or a Sith, but he did develop his abilities to the level of reading other people's thoughts. Coincidentally, in the same cantina, there was another Force-sensitive being, a girl of the Kirash race named Lisub Sirn. She had limited abilities to foresee the future. As a child, she was enslaved, and her Force sensitivity was later discovered by Vader's apprentice, the High Inquisitor Antinous Tremaine, who made her an adept of the Force. Sometime later, she escaped from Tremaine and took refuge in Mos Eisley. What happened to her after Episode 4 remains is unknown. Ordinary Force sensitivity is one thing, but being a full-fledged Force user wielding a lightsaber is quite another. And such a figure can be seen in the movie, not one of the main characters, but I am talking about Saris. She was the daughter of the Prophet of the Dark Side, Imperial Warlord Kronal. Over time, she became one of the 7 Dark Jedi under the Inquisitor Jarek. Saris was a boss in the game Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2. In Episode 4, she appeared as the Prophetess, the pseudonym she used when she was still a spy. She also appeared in this guise in the Star Wars Holiday Special. The 2 stormtroopers who are distracted by Obi-Wan Kenobi during the disabling of the tractor beam on the Death Star are none other than the bumbling Tag and Bink from the non-canonical comedic comic about their adventures. Participating in the Battle of Yavin was a fighter piloted by a member of the Galactic Empire's army, Eden Versio, the main character of the story from Battlefront 2. At which specific moment she was present, I cannot tell, because the authors of this retcon did not care to think through her exact location. Overall, she is not visible, but she is there. Episode 5 follows, and although there are not so many interesting personalities in the background here, those that are present are worth examining. The rebel, Farrell McQuarrie, who appeared in Episode 5 for a couple of seconds, was portrayed by the incomparable artist Ralph McQuarrie, who created concepts for many Star Wars characters. His character, Farrell McQuarrie, was a captain during the Republic's rule, serving during the Clone Wars. One of the bounty hunters standing aboard the Star Destroyer, Zuckuss, was Force-sensitive, which helped him track down his prey. Often he worked with another bounty hunter, the droid 4-Elam, who is also present in this scene. Previously, he was an ordinary protocol droid, much like C-3PO, but he managed to reprogram himself to integrate into a life of crime. One cannot overlook the Trandoshan Bossk, who is also present in the same scene. He was eager to take part in the search for Solo, as Bossk hated him and Chewbacca, with whom he had a long-standing feud. This hatred persisted in the old canon even after Chewbacca's death, when Bossk himself retired from professional bounty hunting. Upon meeting Solo and learning that his Wookiee friend had perished, the Trandoshan laughed. In response, Han broke his face. Bossk was a bounty hunter back during the Clone Wars. In the eponymous animated series, he often worked with a young Boba Fett. Also working with them at the time was Dengar, who likewise appears in this scene, although he is barely noticeable. In the animated series, he was depicted as a funny and sloppy guy, but years later he ceased to be so. Following a swoop accident and the implantation of bioplantants, his mind drastically changed. Dengar became a person devoid of all emotions. The new cybernetics turned his damaged brain into that of a callous and ruthless killer. In the old canon, he saved Boba Fett's life after seeing him escape from the Sarlacc's maw. The bald guy with the implant in his head is named Lobot, and he is the chief assistant to Lando in Cloud City. With the help of his cybernetic implant, Lobot could connect with the main computer and communicate with the city's computer network. In the new canon, before the events of Episode 5, he sacrificed himself to save his best friend Lando. To do this, he subjected his consciousness to neural reformatting. After this, he became much calmer and quieter than before. Lando, in turn, promised to one day heal his friend. After this, he played a pre-recorded message in which Lobot confessed that he believed in Calrissian more than anyone else. Under certain circumstances, Lobot can be played as a character in the game Star Wars Demolition on PS1 and Sega Dreamcast. Unlike Episode 5, Episode 6 is rich in a variety of characters, so let us move on to it. One of Jabba the Hutt's Gamorrean guards is another Force-sensitive being, Tok. He can be played in the Star Wars fighting game, Masters of Teräs Käsi. He was killed by Luke in the battle at the Sarlacc pit. It appears that this Gamorrean has found a place in the new canon as well, as he appears in the children's comic Star Wars adventures. Notably, Tok had a hefty brother, Gork, a dark Jedi who also served Inquisitor Jarek, along with the aforementioned Saris. Yes, Gork does not look like a Gamorrean, but that is all due to the machinations of the dark side prophet Chronal. The lead singer from Jabba's palace, Sy Snootles, appeared not only in this film but also in the Clone Wars, where she acted as the lover of Jabba's brother, Zero. And since true love is eternal, she ended up shooting Zero, working as a hired gun for Jabba the Hutt. Jawa Witten was a warlord of his clan. His sandcrawler was destroyed by Peppers. To obtain a new one, he participated in the deadly swoop races, which were shown in the game Star Wars Demolition. There, he piloted a single-seat hover platform on which a B-1 droid sat, a classic droid of the Confederacy from the prequel trilogy. It is unknown whether he won and managed to get the credits for the new sandcrawler. In any case, he died exploding on Jabba's barge. The costume worn by Leia when entering Jabba's palace belonged to the bounty hunter Boushh. After the events of Episode 3, he was a member of the Crimson Nova group, which hunted Jedi who survived Order 66. Boushh was killed by the replica droid Guri, who then handed his costume to Leia. You all probably noticed the pirate and smuggler Bidlo Quirv in the film, didn't you? He even played an important role in the movie. That skull that saved Luke from perishing in the Rancor pit belonged to Bidlo, who worked for Jabba and wished to become his majordomo, that is, the head of the household staff. He competed for this position with Bib Fortuna, who, as we see in the 6th episode, became the majordomo. But what happened to Bidlo then? Shortly before episode 4, he discovered a crashed ship in the desert with a live Rancor inside. Yes, the same one from the film. Bidlo saw this as his chance to become the majordomo, and decided to gift the beast to Jabba for his birthday, seeking the help of Fortuna for transporting such a tusked present. The Hutt was impressed by the gift and offered Fortuna and Bidlo a choice. One of them would become his majordomo, and the other would be granted some great honor. Jabba did not specify what this was, so the greedy Bidlo agreed to the second option, which played a cruel joke on him. It turns out the great honor was to become the first meal for the Rancor in the palace. Bidlo was eaten by the monster, but even after his death, he was able to take revenge on the beast. These are the kinds of stories that can be connected to characters whose body parts appear on screen for literally a few seconds. The trainer of that Rancor was Malakili. It was he who mourned the death of his beloved beast. He was sold to Jabba as a slave for his entire life. You can also play as him in Star Wars Demolition, where instead of a regular vehicle, he rides the Rancor itself, with a weapon mounted on its back. In the races featured in the game, he never became a winner. For this, Salacious Crumb, a little rascal, sat giggling on his head. There could be no greater humiliation. In this scene, a retcon was planned, where the gray-bearded old man would be revealed as the clone Rex from the animated series The Clone Wars and Rebels. For these purposes, Rex was even given a similar animation model in the 4th season of Rebels, well, almost identical. But eventually, this idea was abandoned because this rebel already had his own name. Well, it wouldn't have been right. Nevertheless, according to the animated series Star Wars: Galaxy of Adventures, we know that Rex did participate in the Endor operation, and it appears that he is the one standing with the other rebels. In the old canon, this was Nick Sant, who was nicknamed Grandfather. To avoid contradictions, the new canon could easily say that the name Nick Sant was used by Rex as a cover, like a pseudonym. It is also worth noting that these two Alguerian guards are once again the idiots Tag and Bink from the same series of parody comics. Nien Nunb, accompanying Lando in the Battle of Endor, was a smuggler but later decided to join the rebels, desiring to restore the Republic. In the new canon, after Episode 6, he became a member of the Resistance, and his ship, with him on board, was blown up by Palpatine's lightning in the Battle of Exegol. And now it is time for the first film of the prequel trilogy, The Phantom Menace. In the scene where Jar Jar Binks is attacked by Sebulba, in the background, you can see the willful Jedi Knight Quinlan Vos sitting at a table, performing a secret mission together with his apprentice Aayla Secura in the spaceport of Mos Espa on Tatooine. Later, Aayla recalled that they were aware of Qui-Gon's mission in The Phantom Menace, and could have helped him reach Coruscant, but did not know that he was in dire need of their assistance. Well, perhaps he just decided to wander through the desert and the streets of the spaceport, which is a regular Jedi activity. In short, they really wanted to help, but it didn't work out. Vos and Secura learned about Jin's death before leaving the planet. In Anakin's room, there is a statuette reminiscent of the Force-sensitive pirate queen Maz Kanata from Episode 7, where she lives in her castle, a former battlefield for ancient Jedi and Sith. In the film, you can see Kitster Chanchani Banai, Anakin's childhood friend on Tatooine. What is interesting about him is that decades later he will encounter Leia, his friend's daughter, and her husband Han Solo. It was Kitster who gave Leia a reason to forgive her father for all the horrors he committed under the guise of Darth Vader, telling her that Anakin must have always regretted his vengeful attack on the Tusken Raiders, which we saw in Episode 2 even when he was already a Sith. Yes, because Leia was just very offended by Vader for the murder of the Tusken Raiders. Such a thing is, of course, hard to forgive. In one way or another, the meeting between Kitster and Leia facilitated the forgiveness of her father by the young woman. In one of the deleted scenes, we see a brawl between Anakin and a young Greedo, who will be shot by Han in Mos Eisley Cantina in Episode 4. An interesting fact: after his murder, the bartender of the establishment, Wuher, and his droid companion took Greedo's body and made a strong drink out of it, which, by the way, I would try. His kin in this scene warns Greedo after the brawl that he should not attack first. What a sound piece of advice. The conclusion: do not listen to idiot friends. Han Solo probably didn't listen for sure. The outcome is well known. Apparently, due to his friend's advice, Greedo did not shoot first, leading to his death. While watching the first episode, have you ever wondered who that other Hutt is next to Jabba? Is it his wife, sister, daughter, or perhaps a garage neighbor? In fact, this Hutt is called Gardala Besadi the Elder, or simply Gardala the Hutt. She was considered an influential crime lord on Tatooine, just like Jabba himself, who owned the slaves Anakin Skywalker and his mother Shmi, but eventually she lost them in a pod racing bet to the Toydarian Watto, whom you surely remember from episodes 1 and 2. Her weakness for excessive gambling continually tarnished her long life with failures and defeats, leading to her downfall amidst conspicuous rivalry with other contenders. Jabba, who usurped control over Tatooine, attempted to kill her, but Gardala survived. By the time of the Clone Wars, her role was reduced to serving as Jabba's representative on Nal Hutta. During the races, in one moment, Aurra Singh, the popular bounty hunter and former member of the Jedi Order, flashes briefly. She was under the tutelage of a mentor called Sharad Het, but after a series of tragic events and misfortunes, she left the Order and became a mercenary, later serving as a mentor to the young Boba Fett. This is well depicted in the animated series Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where it's hinted that she had an intimate relationship with Hondo Ohnaka. I wonder what their children would have looked like. It's mentioned in the Han Solo, a Star Wars story spin-off, that she was killed by Tobias Beckett, one of the main characters of the film. In the old canon, she was alive and well even 40 years after the events of Episode 4, where she was imprisoned by the son of Han and Leia, Jacen Solo. In the Senate chamber, you can spot very familiar Asogians for those who watched Steven Spielberg's film E.T. the Extraterrestrial. These are Asogians from Brodo Asogi, with their senator being an alien named Greblips. His appearance in Star Wars is a tribute to the main character of Spielberg's film. By the way, if you read this name backwards, it turns into Spielberg. Padme Amidala's handmaiden Sabe, who played her queen in this film, played a very interesting role in the events following Episode 5 in the new canon comic Darth Vader, Dark Heart of the Sith. There she, meeting Vader, introduced herself to him as Padme herself. Of course, the girl could not deceive the Dark Lord for long, so he quickly understood who she really was. After joining forces, they began investigating the matter of the real Queen's murder. Sabe wanted to avenge the death of Senator Amidala, and Vader, it seems, wanted to nostalgically reminisce about the old times in his twilight years, imagining that he was traveling once again with Padme herself. The scholar Eben Q3 Baobab is important only due to his kinship with another bearer of the same surname, Mungo Baobab, who first appeared in the animated series Droids, where he was the owner of C-3PO and R2-D2, even before the events of Episode 4. Yes, those droids had many adventures before they met Luke. In the final scene of the episode, one can notice in the background Mace Windu's apprentice, the Jedi Depa Billaba, future mentor to one of the main characters of the animated series Rebels, Kanan Jarrus, also known as Caleb Doom. Both of them briefly appeared in cameos in the 7th season of the Clone Wars. And now, let's move on to the characters from Episode 2. You have surely noticed the repeated mentions in this episode of the Jedi Sifo Dyas, who was the one commissioning the clone army. It is important to note that he was killed thanks to his fellow Jedi Count Dooku, who in turn used the blood of his dead comrade to transfuse it into General Grievous's body, even before the latter became the supreme commander of the separatist droids. Dooku also gave Sifo Dyas's lightsaber to Grievous, and possibly this is the weapon we see in Episode 3. The archivist and Jedi Jocasta Nu, who helped locate the hidden planet Kamino, is intriguing due to her off-screen involvement both in the legends and in the new canon. In the context of the expanded universe of the new canon, she significantly contributed to the establishment of Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order. After the events of Episode 3, Jocasta managed to hide some knowledge from the Empire's meticulous searches. She survived Order 66 and later returned to the Jedi Temple to prevent information about Force-sensitive children from falling into the Empire's evil hands. She had to steal a kyber crystal containing this information from there. Sidious wanted to find Force-sensitive children and raise them as his inquisitors, or possibly as potential replacements for Vader, but it was not destined for him to learn their whereabouts. Although the young Sith Vader was able to capture her along with the kyber crystal, upon learning of Palpatine's possible plan, he killed Jocasta and destroyed the crystal with the information. Interestingly, in the old canon, one of her students was a highly influential inquisitor under the Imperial regime, and this was Jarek, the main antagonist of the game Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, where we could battle him while playing as Kyle Katarn, another great Jedi Knight, but of Luke's new order. You might have noticed one woman, but you did not know who she was. This is Sly Moore, the senior administrative aide to Chancellor Palpatine, privy to his most intimate secrets. There were even rumors that she had a close relationship with him, very close, extremely close. If you have grasped the intimacy and depth of their relationship and are already reaching for a tissue, here is something else pleasant for you. Many called Sly Moore the Queen of the Empire. She was also a dark adept of the dark side, under the tutelage of Darth Sidious. Although she might not have wielded a lightsaber, she certainly could cloud anyone's mind. After the establishment of the Empire, she was sent to the planet Biss to oversee the training of captured Jedi and Padawans. Sly Moore attempted to turn the unfortunate souls into servants of the dark side. Possibly, they later became members of the Imperial Inquisitorius. It is unknown where she went after all this. Rumors suggest she died giving birth to Triclops, a three-eyed mutant, possibly Palpatine's son. Among the Jedi who went to the arena on Geonosis to rescue Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, there was one unusual knight, Sora Bulk, who, after Episode 2, became a Dark Jedi and a disciple of Count Dooku, as Bulk was disillusioned with the Jedi Order. He was such an influential Force user that he was considered Dooku's right hand, and according to the aforementioned Quinlan Vos, he was even regarded as the second Sith Lord. Besides appearances in comics, Bulk also featured in a couple of episodes of the Clone Wars. Clone Trooper CC-6454, also known as Pons, first appeared in Attack of the Clones and later in the Clone Wars. It was precisely he who was killed by Aurra Sing in the second season in the Boba Fett arc, and it was he who was called by name by Anakin. And now it is time for Episode 3. George Lucas, the father of Star Wars, made a cameo as a character named Notluwiski Papanoida. In this film, Papanoida's daughter also appeared, played by George's real-life daughter. They and the other members of their blue-skinned family played significant roles in one of the Clone Wars episodes, where, incidentally, the bounty hunter Greedo was also involved. Commander Appo, who threatened Bail Organa with a weapon, appeared in the Clone Wars in the Umbara arc with the traitor Jedi Pong Krell. Yes, he survived the attack by that youngling in the Jedi Temple. After Episode 3, he even managed to find common ground with Vader. They might have even become friends if it were not for Appo's untimely demise, alongside the corpse of Jedi Roan Shrine, who was in the second episode of the saga. The second Wookiee, who was next to Chewbacca and Yoda, is Tarful, the chieftain of his race. He appeared in one of the Clone Wars episodes, as well as in the new canon game Fallen Order, where he helped the main character, Cal Kestis, find a Jedi holocron with information about the locations of Force-sensitive children. His fate after Episode 3 in the old canon is somewhat different. There, he was captured and enslaved by the Empire, forced to work on the construction of the first Death Star. What happened to him later remains unknown. Jedi dueling master Chin Dralig, whose combat can be seen on a hologram in the film, also appeared in one of the episodes of the 5th season of the Clone Wars. He even trained Anakin himself in the mastery of the lightsaber. Amusingly, Sindralig taught him to fight with swords and ultimately perished by the blade of his own student. Rebel Ramus Antilles, before becoming an actual rebel, made a cameo appearance in this film. We then see him in the Rogue One, and a bit later in the chronology, he is strangled and killed by Vader in the 4th episode. Yes, it is all the same person. Taking this moment, I would like to mention that the surname Antilles is quite common in the Star Wars universe. The creators themselves have said that it is like the surname Smith in our world. It occurs frequently. Now let's move on to the spin-offs. We will start with the film about Han Solo. The administrator of a shipping company on the planet Corellia was standing in line in the Han Solo standalone movie. But in the old canon, he had a more significant role than just standing in line. There, he was a crime lord. The film mentions Doc Ondar, an Ithorian collector situated at the Black Spire outpost on the planet Batuu. If you ever visit Disneyland, you can meet him in the themed park Galaxy's Edge. One of Enfys Nest's crew members is Weasel, who was involved in thievery in the last decades of the Galactic Republic's existence, and became a freedom fighter during the reign of the Galactic Empire. He could be seen in Episode 1, observing the pod race from the stands next to Watto. Among his team was Benthic from Rogue One, not to be confused with Andrio, his brother from the same film and from the animated series Rebels. These two were considered to be eggmates. This term describes a special bond that could arise among the Tognaths, members of this species, who hatched from neighboring eggs during reproduction. After the events of Rogue One, Benthic continued to fight against the Empire, taking over the role of leader of the guerrilla movement on the planet Jeddah, which the Death Star devastated from the late Saw Gerrera. The brain of Lando's droid L-337 in the film became part of the Millennium Falcon, so one could say that she, I say she because L-3 has a female voice, was in all the films where Han's ship appeared. Knowing this gives the scene with C-3PO in Episode 5 an interesting twist. There, the protocol droid, when repairing the hyperdrive, notes that the ship speaks in a strange dialect. Thanks to the spin-off, we now know why. Next, we have another spin-off, Rogue One. One of the rebels' generals, David Straven, served in the Republic's military intelligence before the rise of the Empire. As a rebel, he conducted sabotage, theft, and assassination operations, which tarnished the image of the Alliance but yielded necessary results. 1 year after the 4th episode, he was killed, strangled personally by Vader. The appearance in the film of Saw Gerrera seems to be considered as the first attempt to introduce a character into the movie who initially appeared in the animated series, specifically in the Clone Wars, where he fought for the freedom of his home planet, Onderon. Yes, over the years, life has worn him down to the point that his eyes have changed color. Given the modern trend, I am confident that Saw Gerrera did not become a woman eventually. By the way, the Rebellion logo in the shape of a bird was created based on 2 other emblems. The star bird of Sabine Wren, one of the main characters of the animated series Rebels, and also the partisans of Saw Gerrera. By the way, in the old chronology, this emblem was the family crest of the Marek family. It was this image that was chosen as a symbol of resistance in honor of the sacrifice made by Galen Marek, known to all as Starkiller from the Force Unleashed duology of games. The main characters from Rogue One on Jeddah encounter familiar faces: Ponda Baba and Cornelius Evazan, with whom Luke Skywalker had an unpleasant encounter in the Cantina on Tatooine. These two worked together. Evazan was a mad surgeon conducting immoral and inhumane experiments on people. If anyone didn't know, the scars on his face were obtained from a shot by the bounty hunter Jodo Kast, who was pretending to be Boba Fett after the 6th episode. The interstellar lawkeeper Tam Posla, a policeman from a far galaxy, first appeared in the trailer from Rogue One, but he is not found in the film itself. At the time when he was on Jeddah, he was hunting the criminal Cornelius Evazan. This policeman also managed to appear in the film Solo, where he was monitoring Han and Lando Calrissian's gambling. The humanoid Kaysin Bog can be seen on Jeddah. He also appears only in the trailer for the film. During the rebels' attack, he was torn to pieces, but Cornelius Evazan came to his aid, who put Bog back together. He then left the planet before the arrival of the Death Star. He, along with Tam Posla, with whom he had a romantic relationship, by the way, they were hunting the same surgeon Evazan. While watching the film, you may have wondered why one of Saw Gerrera's partisans is a Wampa from the 5th episode. There is a resemblance, but in fact, this is a Jigoran named Morov, previously a mercenary, presenting himself as a large-scale shooter. It is unclear how he became a partisan, and it is unclear what he did after the destruction of Jeddah City. The Saw partisan team includes Beezer Fortuna. What a creepy one he is. Yes, he is related to that same Jabba's majordomo, Bib Fortuna. They are brothers. The elderly man in the dark robe is Vader's servant, Vani. He served the Sith in his personal castle on Mustafar. Hurst Ramodi is a member of the Grand Army of the Republic during the Clone Wars and one of the first generals of the Empire. He could be seen at the meeting on the Death Star in the 4th episode. Paudok Draba, or fully known as Paudok Draba Takat Sapdirekti, Nik Linkati Kivef Nasevef Likek, or simply Pau, was a rebel who perished in the Battle of Scarif. Before joining the Rebel Alliance, he aspired to become an engineer but chose rebellion after the Empire occupied his homeworld. The simian-like Bistan was also a rebel and, like Pau, died on Scarif. His comrades respected Bistan for his strength and zeal for battle, even though there were instances of insubordination in his biography. The notorious Ghost Ship, which the main heroes of the rebels used to travel the galaxy, also participated in the final battle in Scarif's orbit. Although Kanan and Ezra were most certainly not there, other members could have been involved in this skirmish. For instance, the droid Chopper, who, unlike other members of his team, made a cameo appearance in the movie at that rebel base. The aforementioned ship can also be seen in the background. Pilot Evan Verlaine also took part in this space battle. She isn't visibly seen here, but her ship is discernible. Well, one of these 3 fighters belonged to her. Her starfighter can also be seen in Episode 4 during the Battle of Yavin. This Alderaanian girl swore fealty to Leia after their shared home planet was destroyed. In the comic where she first appeared, Evan Verlaine resembles a female version of Luke. Blonde as well, she also wears the same yellow jacket that the novice Jedi wore at the end of Episode 4, and similarly hangs out with Leia. Familiar pilot faces, Garvin Dryce and John Vander, could also be seen in the battle in Scarif's orbit. There's also an appearance of Jek Tono's fighter. All 3 participated in the Battle of Yavin in A New Hope, where all 3 died. Dryce commanded Red Squadron, while Vander led Gold Squadron. To feature the first 2 pilots in Rogue One, the filmmakers had to use footage of these characters from the 4th episode. The rebellion pilot Pedrin Gall, who perished in the Battle of Scarif, bore the call sign Red 5. After his death, this call sign was taken up by Luke Skywalker. With spin-offs done, let's move on to the first live-action television series of the post-Disney era, The Mandalorian. In the 3rd episode of the first season, The Mandalorian disintegrates Chusido, a female who was previously part of the rebel group Enfys Nest. This was depicted in the Solo movie of Han Solo, where Chusido made an appearance. Apparently, after the fall of the Empire, she became a bounty hunter, leading to her demise. However, Chusido wasn't the only member of the Enfys Nest team to appear in The Mandalorian. Another character from Solo hunts for the Mandalorian. This time, it is Saucerhead. In the film about Han, he was the dealer who dealt cards to Lando and Han during their first meeting. Unlike the previous 2, he managed to stay alive. You must remember the overseer droid EV-9D9 from Jabba's palace. After the death of the Hutt, he became a bartender in that very cantina in Mos Eisley from the 4th episode. Yes, it is the same droid. Truly, life improves after the Empire. By the way, Mark Hamill voices him in The Mandalorian, and now it's time for a new trilogy. We will begin, as you probably guessed, with the 7th episode. Lor San Tekka, a member of the Church of the Force, helped Luke recover the secrets of the Jedi, which the Empire tried to destroy by all means before the events of the film. The cook at Maz Kanata's castle, Strono Tugs, grew up on films about another chef, Gormanda, who appeared in the holiday special. I would not try their cooking. Trinto Dwaba was in the cantina in the 4th episode, and after more than 30 years he ended up in Maz Kanata's castle in the 7th episode. The ancient ME-8D9, known as Emmy, is considered a protocol droid who has lived for many years in Maz Kanata's castle. Once, she was an assassin, worked with the Jedi Order, and acted as a translator for criminals. She has had a rich life, and it's not surprising, considering Emmy was considered older than Maz herself, who is over 1,000 years old. The coolest background character in this film, in my opinion, is the pirate Sidon Ithano, also known as the Crimson Corsair. He is related to a very interesting occurrence. He, together with his pirate crew, discovered a downed separatist ship from the time of the Clone Wars. Inside it, they found a surviving clone medic, Kix, who appeared in the Clone Wars animated series in stasis. After waking up, possibly the last living Clone Wars veteran at that time, Kix joined Sidon's crew. Using the deciphered separatist data, he, along with other pirates, went to search for the lost military bases of the Confederacy. Leneva Vilcham, killed by the Starkiller base's shot, was at that moment the Chancellor of the New Republic, just as Palpatine was in the prequel trilogy. Resistance military officer Corsella was sent by Leia to the Galactic Senate to warn the senators about the threat posed by the First Order. However, it was all in vain, as she, along with the entire planet, was destroyed by the Starkiller base. Stormtrooper 2199 is the same famous member of the First Order who called Finn a traitor, with whom he had previously served. In this film, he perished from the very same shot fired by Chewbacca. The protocol droid, OMR-1, known as Omri, did not appear in all his glory in the film, but his arm can be seen being worn by his friend C-3PO. Omri sacrificed himself helping the Golden Droid, and in his honor, as well as in memory of other droids who fell during their joint mission, C-3PO had a red arm fitted in place of his old one, which he lost during their mission together. The emergence of the astromech droid, R2-KT, is linked to a very sad story. The fact is that the founder of the 501st Legion had a daughter suffering from cancer. When the disease confined her to bed, the girl wished for a droid like R2-D2, who watched over the sleeping Padme in the 2nd episode. This story gained so much attention that an expert in droid construction, Jerry Green, together with his team, built a droid for the girl. According to her father, she kept the pink droid by her bedside until the end of her life. Following this incident, R2-KT began frequently visiting children's hospitals. The astromech itself was named in honor of the cancer-stricken daughter, whose name was Katie, hence the second part of the name KTT. In Star Wars, this character can be seen not only in the films but also in the animated series The Clone Wars. R2-Q2 was an Imperial astromech droid, which could be seen in the scene on the Tantive 4 in the 4th episode, and also in the 7th, where for some reason he began working for the Resistance. Why he did not join the First Order remains unclear. The 8th episode presents issues. Due to the lack of interesting background characters, most look cool, but there are not many interesting backstories behind them. For example, I found the Resistance member Paige Tico, who died at the beginning of the film, is the sister of Rose Tico, who will later emerge as one of the main characters. Finally, we come to the last film, the 9th episode, and there are still some characters worth mentioning. Aftab Akbar, as you might already guess, was the son of Admiral Akbar. But his interest ends there. It seems he was added to the film in an attempt to somehow soften the death of Akbar Sr. in the previous film. Ochi, a follower of Palpatine, served him after the events of the 6th episode. Under the Emperor's orders, he tracked down and killed Rey's parents. During the time of the Empire, he also served the Emperor as a follower of the Sith, and was even sent by his command to attack Vader. Sometime later he died, caught in a trap in the caves on the planet Pasana from Episode 9. It is possible that the bounty hunter Rotgar Dung might be the well-known Dengar from Episode 5. Besides their external similarities, At least in the color scheme of their costumes, the name Rotgard is strikingly similar to Dengar. Additionally, Dengar's obsession with implants might have contributed to what happened to him. One of the heroes of the original trilogy, pilot and rebel hero Wedge Antilles, was spotted in the Battle of Exegol. You might have missed him. The little Ewok, Pommet Warrick, stands at the end alongside his father, Wicket Warrick, who was the very Ewok that met Leia in Episode 6. In the legends, after the Battle of Endor, he became the new leader of his tribe when the previous leader died of old age. In this scene, these two cuties stand and watch the explosion in the sky, waiting for the human bodies to fall into the forests of Endor for their evening meal. In Episode 9, the mysterious Knights of Ren were shown a bit more, but their story was not revealed there. Now, for the end, let's note the heroes who did not personally appear in the movie, but were either nearby or closely connected to some moment in the films, and they are worth mentioning. Anakin, avenging his mother's death in Episode 2, slaughters the entire Tusken village. Well, almost the entire village. One managed to survive, although he does not appear in the film. It is worth mentioning him. That Tusken's name is Hor, who was Force-sensitive and intended to avenge his slaughtered clan by killing Luke, Anakin's son. Hor first appeared as a playable character in the game Masters of Teräs Käsi. The Emperor's Hand and future wife of Luke, Mara Jade, does not appear in the film but was present during its events in Jabba's palace in Episode 6 under the alias Erica. Disguised as a dancer, her goal was to kill Luke, but for certain reasons she was unable to do so. Stormtrooper 17786 may have been shown in the films, but this has never been confirmed. Notably, he was Force-sensitive and recruited into the ranks of the Emperor's Guard by Arden Lin. This woman was a dark Jedi and master of the ancient martial art, Teräs Käsi. The group included the aforementioned Gamorrean Tok, Hor, and this particular stormtrooper. According to official data, she gathered them to train in the combat style of Teräs Käsi, and subsequently together destroy the heroes of Yavin, namely Han, Luke, Leia, and others. However, in reality, all this was instigated to overthrow Palpatine, which, of course, did not happen. Stormtrooper 17786, by the way, was the son of one of the Grand Admirals, specifically Nihil Declan, who himself had sensitivity to the Force. Darth Plagueis did not appear in the films, but he occasionally loomed on the horizon. Palpatine mentions him in Episode 3, and in the same film you can see these vases, one of which Sidious used to store the ashes of his teacher, Darth Plagueis. In this moment in Episode 1, as noted by some Star Wars fans, Plagueis is seated behind Palpatine. In fact, there are many more characters not mentioned in my story who have some background in all of these pictures, but I think I have managed to tell about the most interesting of them. Who did you notice?